Coming up on today's Green Signals, your railway podcast. Could 75,000 train fare evasion prosecutions be unlawful? The Isle of Wight Railway Island Line faces long closures for maintenance yet again. LNER and other train companies launch a Be Kind initiative to tackle unacceptable and growing abuse towards staff. It's the end of the line for King Cole on rail. A 200-year-old relationship ends. And in good news, the railway family raises £200,000 in the Three Peaks Challenge. And welcome to Green Signals from me, Nigel Harris, in lovely Lincolnshire, on polling day, I'm going to admit. And
and me, Richard Bowker, here in Wiltshire. And because there's been no time warp, it's also polling day here, yes.
We don't normally record quite so late, but we had a few technical issues and things to do, so we're a bit hard against it. So we'll crack on because Richard has to edit it all once we've done for publication a bit later. First of all, many, many genuinely humbled thanks to the incredible number of you who have left us super thanks again this week on YouTube. Chris Exley, Robert Walsh, Rob Staffordian, Wacky Racers, John Kirkman, Roddy Jenkins, Matt Jackson, John Pickup, Brian Newton, Donald Thompson, Stuart Broadbent, and the independent Brigline Rail Group. Plenty of whom have actually left us super thanks more than once. Indeed, since so many of you are now contributing regularly, we've been thinking about how we could come up with something that delivers even more value to those that are supporting us so faithfully. And in part, this was inspired by this brilliant comment from regular listener Steve Athers, who said, "What another cracking episode, especially the interview with Tony Bush." Steve went on, "Years ago, you had to wait monthly or fortnightly for your favourite magazine to appear in your local newsagent. But now we've moved on, and we've got two railway experts talking real railway stuff filled with great humour." Not sure about the experts bit, Richard. I think, there's an old saying, isn't there, that an expert, X is something that has been, and a spurt is a drip under pressure. So,
Fantastic.
when I do the TV news things, I always ask them not to bill me as an expert on the ticker at the bottom of the screen. Can we please have specialist? But there you go. Anyway, this got us thinking, and so we've come up with a bit of a cunning plan, as Blackadder might have said.
We have indeed. We're actually going to launch a sort of special member service for regular viewers and listeners on YouTube. It'll be YouTube to begin with because the way that the audio platforms work is slightly different. But the idea is that there will be an opportunity to sign up to be a member. There'll be a small fee. In return, you'll get members-only exclusive content, which is going to be brilliant, by the way. We've got some big plans. Exclusive access to some special shows we've got planned, including some live ones and some Q&As, and a special gift as well to say thanks for being a member, and probably quite a bit more. It does cost us money to produce the shows, particularly when we go out and about. If we go out somewhere. So the membership scheme is not really a commercial venture. It's just to help us to do more of this and to grow the channel and produce, hopefully, some more great content.
I'm really looking forward to it, especially the exclusive content, because we've got some good ideas we're kicking about, which I think will be good. So, shall we share when we're going to launch it?
Well, yeah, it will be before the end of the summer. We're just putting some finishing touches to it now. Steph and I have decided it is actually quite straightforward to do on YouTube, but we also want to make sure there's a few things that once you've done them, you can't undo them. So we just want to make sure that's right. Incidentally, you'll still be able to listen to all the stuff that we do today for free. That's not going to change.
Doesn't change.
No,
it will always be free.
Yeah, the membership scheme is kind of for extra stuff. And as I say, we got some great ideas planned. Actually, we had some fun brainstorming that, didn't we? So
we did.
It's going to be good.
And it's been driven by the green signalers themselves as a result of these growing number of
Indeed.
Of super thanks. We're trying to find out how we can expand on on that. So it's excellent stuff. I might even sign up myself, Richard.
Excellent. You'll be
well, there you
more
go.
than
I want to
welcome.
be. That's right. I want to be member number 1. So there you go. Now we should also mention the latest from our listeners around the world. We had Stuart Harrod, who listens regularly from Denmark. Thanks, Stuart. But we have to say the winner this week is almost certainly Alistair Ali Weaver, who emailed us to say, I just wanted to say thank you for the excellent podcast. I really enjoy it. I'm currently on a sabbatical from the rail industry, and I'm using green signals to keep up to date with all the latest rail industry news. You recently asked where we listen to the show. Well, this morning I was listening to the podcast after camping in the Ugam Chatkal National Park near Tashkent, Uzbekistan.
Blimey, you need your teeth in for that one.
I was dreading it coming up, and I thought I'm bound to stumble over this.
Very good, well done.
So I might not have got the pronunciations right, but by God, I got through it. Ali continues, Helen, my girlfriend, kindly took the attached photo. Keep up the great work. We will. And if you watch on YouTube, you can see Helen's photo of Alistair right now.
Now, but before we go on, actually, talking of watching on YouTube, we did have somebody who sent us a really interesting comment, because you remember last week we talked about our faces, didn't we?
Well, we did, because we had a bit of a joke about it. Somebody said that they wanted to see our faces and move the microphone. I think you quite rightly said that's the first time anybody's ever said that. And we both felt a bit sort of sheepish, didn't we? Because we got a message after from somebody saying, well, actually, it is a serious issue. I'm hard of hearing, and I rely on lip reading a lot. And if that microphone's in front of your face, I can't see and I can't understand what you're saying. So apologies for maybe treating it a bit lightly when it came up. It was more a comment on us than what,
definitely.
you know. But as you can see, we've both moved our microphones. You can see our mouths, and our apologies to anybody of hard of hearing who's been struggling a bit. Hopefully, you can now keep up. So thank you for the offer, and we're always happy to help if we can to make green signals more accessible to anyone. Now, for a variety of reasons, not least thanks to Richard's Land Rover, which gave up the ghost this week, we're recording this later than usual. So on the same day, we intend to publish it. No pressure, eh? But as I said earlier, it is election day, and it's very early, and I was on the polling station steps at 7 o'clock this morning to exercise my franchise, and have duly put my cross in the box. Are you excited, Richard?
I think it's going to be a remarkable day. I'm the same as you. I will be making sure I vote later. It's one of those things where I think, there's so many places in the world where you can't do what we're all doing today, that it's just, I think we've got almost like a duty to do it. So we'll do it later. Even though I think the outcome's going to be as predicted, I still think there's going to be a couple of surprises along the way.
There will, and I agree wholeheartedly. My dear old late mum always used to say you should never waste your vote. And when you look at the TV screens about some countries overseas where they'll queue for hours in the blazing sun to vote, and people have died for your vote, to say I'm just not going to bother, for me, is not on. So please do always remember that. I agree it's going to be a remarkable day. I've got some... I tweeted about this last night, and it triggered quite a debate. I said I've got some important choices to make today in Morrison's about what my snacks are going to be for election night, which I always sit up and love. And I said initial thoughts were for hula hoops and Skittles, and it triggered this enormous discussion going on about Pringles and biscuits and what people's snacks were for overnight. So I'll be there on Twitter tonight, as I always am. It's always good fun. Do you stay up at all?
No, I tend not to. It's not going to change the outcome, is it? And I don't find it all that compelling to watch. I did do that in 97. I admit I did that in 97 because it was such an amazing evening in so many ways. And I was a much younger man, and we'd had basically 18 years of then Conservative government. Oh, yeah. So I did stay up for that one. But no, I won't do it. I think it's going to be interesting. I mean, the thing we're really interested in is what does it mean for the railway, right? I hopefully a new dawn on the manifesto, as we covered this in a show the other week. Labour's is the one that does it for me on railway matters. Doesn't mean I agree with everything that's in the rest of the document, because I sure as heck don't. But on the railway stuff, I think that one does it because it goes further than the government's plans for reform, and there's a real pragmatism about what needs to happen immediately. But we'll wait and see. We shall see.
Indeed, we will. Just one last point on the election stuff, Richard, being compelling. The 16 cabinet ministers are regarded as highly likely to lose the seats. So the idea of 16 Portillo moments, which I think was 1997, could be quite compelling stuff, yes, especially if it involves Grant Shapps. But there you go. We'll move on. Let's go to the Railway Roundup, which went down very well last week. First, we have some news from the US, where full environmental approval has been secured for the full route from San Francisco to Los Angeles for the California High-Speed Rail Authority. It still has some pretty significant funding issues, and although we're delighted for our American cousins, I have to say, Richard, it's pretty depressing that the US, hardly known for its progressive thinking towards passenger railways, can make such a bold step with high-speed rail, whilst here in the UK, we're going backwards.
I know, and it's not just that project either. There's others, there's Bright Line and there's the Amtrak stuff. No, it is a bit depressing. From one extreme to the other, though, high speed rail in the US, as you mentioned, we see that the Island Line on the Isle of Wight is to close completely from the 6th of September to the 6th of October for vital maintenance. Worse, the bit at Ryde Pier is to close from the 6th of September for 9 months for further life extension work. We'll talk a little bit about the Island Line later on the show, but it's kind of deja vu for those guys again, isn't it?
It is indeed. Some good news on ticketing. East Midlands Railway, EMR, has launched a new ticket type, which allows flexible customers, and I don't mean customers who can bend, the opportunity to save up to 50% on tickets. 50%, you heard that right. EMR's new secret fare, launched in partnership with Seatfrog, offers a unique opportunity for those who are flexible with their travel times, and means customers can travel with EMR between Nottingham and London and Derby and London for as little as £12, or between Sheffield and London from £16, as well as between Sheffield and Liverpool for just £4. You can't grumble at that, can you? We've put an explanation of how it works on the website. Check out the additional resources for episode 40. I like it. Good bit of innovation.
It's great. We actually asked them if they'd like to come on the show, and they said no. I think they're a bit more polite than that, but we weren't trying to catch them out. So if you are listening, anybody from East Midlands Railway or Transport UK Limited, it's an opportunity to come and tell us about it and promote what you're doing, because it sounds great.
Indeed, and Dominic Booth is never normally shy of promoting what's going on, is he?
No, actually, and we've got a Transport UK story later on the show, so maybe we'll come back to Dominic then. Just on the news, just finishing off the news round, a slightly more solemn news story, this, but really important. On Friday, the 28th of June, rail industry leaders and local residents joined forces to unveil a new stained glass window in St. Peter's Church, Hixon, marking the Hixon rail disaster of the 6th of January 1968.
Horrific.
It was horrific. A Manchester to London service, around 300 passengers on board, collided with a road transporter, which I think grounded on the level crossing. It was carrying like an electrical transformer. Big and very solid. 120 tons. And it collided into that, and tragically the driver, the assistant, a spare driver, and 8 passengers died. This window has been designed and installed by a local business owner, Glyn Rayson, and it's been funded by organisations across the railway family, including Cross Country, Network Rail, Avanti West Coast, and ASLEF. So that's well done them. It was unveiled in the village church to represent the decades-long relationship between the railway, the former RAF base at Hixon, and St. Peter's Parish. And they had a dedication service, and a wreath was laid at the headstone that they'd installed in 2018, actually, to commemorate those who lost their lives in the Hixon rail disaster. A fitting memorial indeed. So well done.
I mean, you can. It makes your blood run cold, doesn't it? That transformer grounded on the crossing, and how everybody concerned there must have felt when the bells and sirens went off and the barriers came down, and round the corner came a express at line speed. Just awful.
No, there is now a bridge there, but nonetheless, a lot changed as a result of that accident, and for the better. Before we move on, because that's it for the Railway News Roundup this week, Nigel, but it's worth a quick mention of our Andy Byford interview.
It is.
It just reminded me when you were talking about high-speed rail in the US, because that's obviously what Andy's now doing, leading Amtrak's high-speed rail program. We published the interview with Andy on the YouTube channel and on audio on Tuesday, the 2nd of July. For those who are new to our channel or aren't aware of this particular show, it's definitely worth a look. Andy's had some extraordinary jobs. He was CEO of New York Mass Transit Authority. He was Commissioner of Transport for London, loads of other big stuff. I think of all the videos that we put up, I mean, our videos now do get lots and lots of views and lots of comments. This one, pretty much every person who's listened to it has left a comment saying, wow, I'm just blown away. My goodness, So do listen to it. It's on our channel, Andy Byford, and it will blow your mind. It's fantastic.
It will, from the days of your days at university together to this, is carrying out of probably the biggest job on all the continents in transport capitals.
Yeah.
But what struck me was, and I don't wish this to sound condescending or patronising, what a nice bloke he came across as well as being vastly experienced, really astute, and absolutely on the ball. I find myself more than once thinking, ring him and ask him to come back and sort the mess that we're sitting on.
Well, I asked him that question. I mean, I'm not going to tell you what he said because you have to listen to the interview. But I did ask him that question: would you come back and sort a few things out? So listen to what he said. Interesting.
It is a fact, and I had nothing to do with it. Richard did it. This is one of Richard's projects, and did a brilliant job with it, and it is fantastic. I think Richard said once before, this is not a question. You must watch it. I guarantee that you're going to enjoy it and be inspired by it.
Yeah.
Okay, be kind. Something really important that needs highlighting. To make World Social Media Day on Sunday, the June 30th, a cross-industry team came together to make a short but very powerful video where just a small selection of the highly offensive messages sent to social media and customer contact centre staff are read out. The video powerfully describes the impact these horrible words have on those who receive them and concludes with an appeal to remember that those teams are there to help and it genuinely isn't their fault and venting on them is not on. Here's the video. Take a look.
You're a with no GCSEs. Your only option was to work on the trains.
Take the passwords off your intern and bring the grown-ups back into the room.
You're useless. You're a moron.
You're a big, fat, nasty reading that makes me feel pretty worthless.
Plenty of people could do the job better than you.
You're an embarrassment to your family.
I hope you rot in hell. You're a stupid. Have a nice day playing social media.
These, you are not a joke.
And don't cry over these messages, because you deserve every abuse.
Disgusting, filthy animals.
Anyone with half a brain would correct what job you're doing. Reading that makes me feel pretty pointless.
Makes me feel quite intimidated.
We understand sometimes things can go wrong, but please remember that we are here to help.
I'm someone's mum.
I am someone's daughter.
I am someone's son.
I am someone's best friend.
I am someone's sister.
And I'm someone's dad.
We are someone's mum.
please remember to be kind.
I am someone.
Right. Thanks to LNER for sending us the film so we could include it in this week's show. Let us know what you think. It is part of the Industry First Be Kind campaign, introduced by LNER, yet another great initiative by LNER, with the launch of Be Kind badges. These are worn by rail colleagues and act as a reminder that they're people too and request kindness and deserve it. Demand it, actually. Other train operators, including Great Western Railway, TransPennine Express and South Western Railway, soon join the campaign. Now more than half of UK train operators are involved, with more set to follow, hopefully the entire other half. Be Kind supports both frontline visible staff as well as those who work behind the scenes, communicating with customers via social media and email. Train operators have found that when delays or cancellations happen, social media teams in particular are often on the receiving end of the most upsetting, hurtful messages and abuse. It's just, I mean, I've spent some time standing behind some of the social media teams and just watching what happens on the screens. And the idea of a day of that toxifying your brain and then going home to your family, it must be just awful. So, you know, if you stood on a platform and your day's been wrecked, I understand how irritating that is, but don't take it out on the social media teams.
No. I mean, I've, like you, both in a professional and in a sort of personal capacity, I've met thousands, I mean, literally thousands of people who work for the railways over the years. And I can't think of anybody who didn't want to just do a good job, you know. So, you know, when things go wrong, yeah, we all get a bit frustrated, but there is literally no justification for ever taking it out on the poor person that's actually trying to help you. So this is a great initiative and to be applauded. Definitely.
If you wouldn't say it to the face, don't key it and send it online. And the railway's often it's always at its best, isn't it, when its back's against the wall, and that's when the railway people deliver of their best. It's always been the case. Fair's fair. Here's an amazing story that's been bubbling away for a few weeks now, but deserves to be aired widely. I have to say I was gobsmacked. A number in it had somehow slipped my radar, and when we all talked about it and read about it, I just couldn't believe it. A number of news outlets have reported that passenger Christian Waters had been unable to buy a ticket because a ticket machine at his local station was broken. He was subsequently taken to court for fare evasion under the single justice procedure and successfully prosecuted. But he, and others in fairness, fought back. Well done them. And what seems to have unfolded since is quite extraordinary.
It is. I mean, fare evasion is a serious issue.
Absolutely.
And nothing new. And as the railway companies have made very clear, there's lots and lots of ways to buy a ticket. And, you know, that's what we all must do. But it's what's happened in this particular, the circumstances around this one are really interesting, as you say. So what happened? Right. Well, the story's been reported widely, but it did get, in lots of places now, but it did get a really significant write-up in the London Evening Standard on the 14th of June, then again about a week later on the 20th. Now, the Standard says that rail firms have been accused of misusing the courts because they'd revealed tens of thousands, and that is, you know, tens of thousands of people have been convicted of fare evasion in what appear to be unlawful fast-track court hearings. Now, why is that even a thing? Well, since 2016, some train companies, not all, but some train companies have been pursuing alleged fare dodgers using something called the Single Justice Procedure, SJP. Right? Now, SJP was set up, I think, in 2015, and its purpose was to allow magistrates to decide on minor offences like, you know, watching the telly when you haven't got a TV licence, that sort of thing. But they were to do that without the need, they were able to do that in writing rather than the defendant having to go to court.
Better
so it was
use of
designed
court time,
to fast
not
track.
wasting time, yeah.
But it appears that the legislation which set up SJP does not permit rail firms as private prosecutors to use something called the Regulation of Railways Act 1889. And yeah, I haven't made that up. RORA 1889 is the legislation. I think it's Section 5, which is used to deal with fare evasion.
Good grief.
And that's because when SJP was set up, it did not include the Regulation of Railways Act 1889 as part of the as one of the bits of legislation that could be used through it. So there you go. It looks like it was not included in the scope of SJP.
So Northern, government owned since 2020, of course, is the company that brought the action against Mr. Waters. It was subsequently settled, we understand, so we asked them for a comment. They declined to come on the show, there you go, but they did say there are multiple ways to buy a Northern train ticket, including on the ARPA website, ticket vending machines or ticket offices, and our colleagues are happy to provide advice if needed. We remind people of the need to buy tickets at stations and on trains. Our focus remains on ensuring that all our customers are treated fairly, which means ensuring all passengers who board our trains have a valid ticket. Fair enough. Northern stopped bringing new cases under the single justice procedure for offences under the Regulation of Railways Act 1889 in January and are reviewing its previous use. OK, Richard, so that's their line, and I suppose because the test cases are live, it's what we'd expect. But how many cases in total? It's quite a big number, isn't it?
It is a very big number. There are 6 test cases going through the courts presently. And in a recent hearing at Westminster Magistrates Court, I think that was on around the 19th to the 20th of June. So probably when the Standard were reporting on this. The chief magistrate, a gentleman called Paul Goldspring, said his initial view was that all of the offences which were not covered by the 2016 order, so he's talking about the use of SJP, but prosecuted under the SJP process are void.
Wow.
As a result, almost 75,000 convictions may have been legally unsafe. Now, a couple of really important points to make. Number one, that's not Northern, right? That's everybody. Okay. But it's 75,000. What he also said was that had the Regulation of Railways Act 1889 been included within the SJP process, then his view is that those prosecutions would have been okay. So this, you could argue, this is a technicality, but nonetheless, it's certainly a very embarrassing one and a pretty troubling one, really. But that's the kind of number we're talking about here.
So what on earth happens next?
Well, so I mentioned there was those 6 test cases. What's happened is the chief magistrate, he's asked the train companies who originally prosecuted those particular 6 cases.
Okay, with you.
Right, to say whether they agree with his view about it not being safe because they shouldn't have used that process by providing him with written submissions. So they basically got that. They've got some homework, right? If when they've done that, there's no consensus between what his view is and what they think, then there's going to have to be another hearing, which I understand will be in the same court around July the 19th. So, this has still got some process to go.
And it's important to draw the distinction between legally unsafe and whether or not the people did it, because it seems to imply that most of a good number of those prosecutions would have been justifiable, but we've got a technical loophole here through which the railway has slipped.
He has said very clearly, had the Regulation of Railways Act been part of the SJP process, then they would have been correctly prosecuted. So yeah, he's and I think it is really important to point out that nowadays there's so many different ways of buying a ticket. The Railway Regulations Act, you do have some a defence against prosecution if you can demonstrate you could not buy a ticket by any means.
As Christian did, because the machine was broken before he got on.
Well, there's apps, right? And there's other ways of doing it.
Not everybody has a smartphone.
Well, and that's why it gets a bit more complicated. But your point is still right. This is not saying all of these cases shouldn't have come at all. They just use the wrong process.
And fare dodging is an absolute scourge.
Yeah.
So they do need to clamp down on it. Righty-ho. Okay, at the top of the show, we mentioned that the 8.5-mile island line on the Isle of Wight has yet more closures planned. The entire route from Ryde Pierhead to Shanklin will close between 6th of September and 6th of October for vital maintenance, according to South Western Railway. The section of line on Ryde Pier will close from September the 6th until May 2025, while life extension work continues. And this is not the first time the line has been closed for extensive periods. The route was closed for 10 months only in 2021 for a complete overhaul, including track and signalling, and the pier was then also closed for a further 9 months in 22-23, with less than half of the planned work completed. Apparently, winter weather that was worse than expected was to blame. But you do wonder about it. It just seems to go on and on. Such a short piece of railway being being so often disrupted. And I'm sure questions are being asked as to whether a bus might do the job better. And you have to say that might be a bit tough to answer given the experience on the Isle of Wight. I noticed that even Graham Eccles of this parish tweeted the other day that it was maybe time to give up on the island line.
Well, that's a bold thing, isn't it? I think the politics of that would be very, very difficult. The Isle of Wight does have a sort of a bit of a sort of political ecosystem of its own, really. You have lots of issues around the ferries, for example. So I think that would be pretty tricky. But I agree that it does seem to be kind of continuous and ongoing. And in fact, we asked South Western Railway if they would come on and talk about the Island Line. And here's the thing. They said not only would they like to do that, but they actually really like to do it with Network Rail.
Bring a friend.
But that's great. Actually, that's fantastic. Right? We have a really good discussion about it.
We can and we will.
Unfortunately, because of the election, which is obviously today, Network Rail have been prohibited from doing any public media appearances. I still don't understand why. I mean, I just think that's really bizarre. It's not like we want to ask them their view on, global politics. We want to ask them about the line from Ryde to Shanklin, which doesn't quite strike me as on the same scale. But there you go. So they couldn't come on today, but they've said they'd like to come on very soon. And hopefully we'll be able to get that organised next week. And we're also going to hopefully invite on the chair of the Islands Bus and Rail User Group, who I suspect will have some views on Mr. Eccles' suggestion, no doubt. So there we go.
Quick question for you, Richard. I've postulated in the past, does it have to be part of a massive franchise like South Western Railway, or should it be a micro franchise? I did wonder once whether the Isle of Wight Steam Railway should take a micro franchise on the whole, what was left of the railway.
I think the challenge is that there are costs, there are fixed overheads, which if you have it on its own, you have to have. Whereas if you have it as part of South Western Railway, that you can basically
get a bit lost.
I'd say lose them, but the line becomes a marginal cost rather than having to have all its own same overhead. Now, could somebody like the Isle of Wight Steam Railway run it? I don't know. Light railways are different to main. I don't know really, but there's also the question of if there are significant infrastructure issues, as there clearly are with Ryde Pier. The Isle of Wight Steam Railway is not going to fix
no,
those.
But that would all have to be done by. It was just an idle musing.
You're being whimsical and nostalgic, aren't you? Really? You've got the idea of little terrier locos, whatever they were, sort of pootling down to Shanklin.
I'm not saying we should put it back to the LSWR 044 tanks, but you just look at all solutions, don't you, when you've got a problem, and that sort of occurs to me. Anyway, let's move on. Let's
come back from our trip down memory lane and move on. Yeah,
in the land of Agatha Christie and Miss Marple.
Well, actually, I'll tell you what, on the subject of déjà vu, which is certainly what the Arden line is facing, news broke this week of more trains planned for the West Coast.
I thought it was full.
Well, yeah, I mean, there are places where the number of paths available and the number of people with access rights is pretty much the same number. Yeah, but not everything runs at the moment. We know some of the freight stuff's, going through a sort of an economic cycle. But no, I agree. I thought I knew this railway line pretty well, right? But everybody seems to have found some more space. This one's a bit cleverer, actually. This one's a bit more a bit more subtle. So the proposal from London North Western Railway, which is part of Transport UK Group, which were the guys that used to be Abellio. So they run East Midlands Railway as well, and they've got Greater Anglia, right? So this is the organisation that Dominic Booth and his management team did a buyout of. So anyway, London North Western Railway have said that they want to improve connectivity between the Midlands, the Northwest, and provide more choice for passengers. And under the proposals, they're going to extend their existing services between London Euston and Crewe through to Manchester. And services between Stafford and Crewe would be actually extended to Manchester Airport. And they say that this will bring additional capacity to Manchester. It will also create new direct links from Rugeley, Lichfield, Tamworth, and Atherstone in the West Midlands to Manchester and Warrington, and this will happen from summer 2026.
So quite quick to implement.
Yeah, well, I suppose the issue here is it is extending an existing service. They say, though, I mean, that sounds straightforward, but of course it never is quite. So they say they'll work with existing local operators, Network Rail, to determine what the best solution is. They've got to tie that in with upgrades that are planned for Manchester Victoria Station, the Transpennine route upgrade, and there's other things going on in the Northwest. So it's not like, oh yeah, let's do it from tomorrow. But it is, as you say, it's planned for relatively short term.
And we thought that TOC innovation was dead. There you go. I did see, though, that Ian McConnell, Managing Director of West Midlands Trains, operator of LNWR, said this proposal is the common sense solution to increase connectivity between the Northwest and the West Midlands following the cancellation of the northern leg of HS2. He went on to say, with platform space at Euston at a premium, the best way to provide new journey opportunities to Manchester is simply to extend existing services rather than trying to squeeze more trains onto the congested West Coast main line, by which I suppose is meaning the south, because it would be new trains on the north if he extends them. But this was his best comment. Additionally, unlike the open access model, at which we all sit to attention, the millions of pounds of extra revenue our proposals would generate will be returned to the taxpayer, providing a win-win for rail passengers, close quote. Discuss Richard Bowker.
Well, it did make me smile, I suppose. The only thing it could have said is, in brackets afterwards, which of course won't be abstractive. I mean, it was quite a cheeky comment. And they were, they were pressing quite a few buttons there throughout that release. Henry Murison, who's the chief executive of Northern Powerhouse and a big advocate of more transport investment in the Northwest, he tweeted the following when he heard about this, and he said, extending a stopping train from Crewe to Manchester may have some benefits, but it is not a significant connectivity improvement between Birmingham, Manchester, rest of the Northwest and Yorkshire. That is the big hole in the government's announcements from last autumn, i.e. when they cancelled the HS2 phase 2 to Manchester. And you need more long-term capacity. You need more capacity long-term to fix. And I have to say, I think he's right. So this is, it's a good thing. It's probably a good thing to do, subject to there being capacity. And there are issues at Crewe and there are issues at Manchester. But let's assume they can resolve those. This does not do what HS2 would have done. Let's be absolutely clear about that. And it was a clever press release, but
being the cynic I am, I can't help thinking that the DFT probably quite likes it because it will convince itself and want us to think that it does exactly what you've just said it doesn't.
Well, that's probably very true, Nigel. I mean, there was a little bit, but they did go Oh, brilliant. Because they're not an open access operator, these guys. They've got a contract. So there's a bit of, actually, there is something innovative. There's something proactive. So, who came up with the idea? Was it them or was it the DFT? It was both. I suppose in a way it doesn't really matter. But I think you're right that there'll be some going, oh, we can be seen to have done what HS2 would have done. No, that absolutely is not the case. So good idea, but not the solution that you claim it is.
I wouldn't mind betting that's exactly what people in the DFT are thinking. Yeah. Anyway, LNWR will formally submit its plans to the Office of Rail and Road, ORR, later this year. And if approved, the new services could commence from May 2026, once additional train crew have been recruited and trained. We should definitely ask LNWR onto the show to see if they'd like to chat a bit more about this. It's a long time since we talked to Dominic Booth anyway. It's about time he got his backside into our studio chair, isn't it?
Yeah, no, he's a great guy, and that would be good. So we'll see what we can do.
So if you listen to this, Dominic, consider yourself invited. If you're one of Dominic's men, please pass it on to him and tell him to give us a call. Slightly sad one here, and a very salutary one. Piece of big news in the last week is the fact that the very last coal train on Britain's railway, bringing to end a partnership that's existed since the first steam locomotives ran on Britain's railway 200 years or so ago, has run. The very last train of 1,650 tonnes of coal was delivered by GB Rail Freight to Uniper's Ratcliffe-on-Soar power station as it prepares for closure itself on the 30th of September. Incidentally, 1,650 tonnes of coal is enough to generate electricity for approximately 500,000 homes for an 8-hour period. To mark the end of this partnership, GB Rail Freight named the locomotive that pulled the last train, 66781, Ratcliffe Power Station. First commissioned in 1967, this power station is the last operational coal-fired power station in the UK. Just mull on that for a minute. Has 4 500-megawatt units, and its total 2-gigawatt capacity is capable of producing enough juice to power more than 2 million homes, roughly the whole of the East Midlands area. And I see it working quite a lot, Richard. I wonder what's going to happen when it's gone. Are we going to have enough wind and all the rest of it? Over its 57 years, the electricity generated has produced enough energy, I love stats like this, to make more than 1 billion cups of tea every day and over 21 trillion overall. Ratcliffe Power Station will remain operational until the end of September. You're the accountant, Richard. Tell me what 1 trillion is.
In this country, I think it's 1,000 billion.
Okay. Because it's not the same number, in the States, is it?
I can't remember. I know that because 1 billion in the States is 1 million, whereas 1 billion here is 1,000 million.
Oh, so I didn't know that either.
Yeah, I can't remember about 1 trillion. But anyway, I'm pretty certain here it's 1,000 billion. Anyway, it's a lot. It's a lot. There's some other, I was looking at this, there's some other incredible stats around coal. I mean, coal's always been synonymous with the railway, and not just for moving it, obviously, but for putting stuff in steam trains. Before the miners' strike, which is 40 years ago now, because it was 1984, the railway carried, the year before that, just under 90 million tonnes of coal. Right? I mean, that sounds a huge number. I mean, bearing in mind, 100 years ago, the UK was producing we were digging out the ground around 300 million tonnes of coal per annum. And we were exporting quite a lot of it, but I mean, it's just extraordinary numbers. But we were moving by rail in 1983, about 88 million tonnes. Then we had the miners' strike. And in the year of the strike, that dropped dramatically, mainly because they weren't digging it out the ground, but also because the rail unions said, well, we're not moving it. I suppose that was in sort of solidarity with the National Union of Mine Workers. And it dropped to something like 15 million tonnes. Now, after the strike had finished, I think a lot of people, certainly the rail unions, thought, well, it'll just come back. But it never did, not to those levels. And of course, the numbers of pits then dropped considerably. I mean, we had about 170 pits before the strike, and now, of course, there's none, right? We have actually carried a lot of coal in the intervening years because there's been quite a lot of imported coal. And actually, this last train you're talking about was imported coal. I think it came into Immingham I'm not sure from where, but then it moved to Ratcliffe from Immingham. But that's it. Now it's gone, and I suppose it's inevitable, really, in a low carbon economy as we're trying to get away with it. But it is, as you say, it's an extraordinary moment in history.
Well, even relatively recently, the Settle in Carlisle was upgraded, wasn't it, for imported coal coming in at the old iron terminal at Hunterston and going south over the Settle in Carlisle. But this wasn't the first time the unions got it wrong on it will come back. The 1955 footplatemen's strike decimated the freight market, and everybody thought it would come back, and it just didn't.
I know. I mean, we're going to end up in a point where, we're using coal less and less generally, when blast furnaces are moved over to arc furnaces, and there's less and less of it being burned. So it is quite an amazing moment. The only thing I think is interesting is you hear people say, "Oh yeah, but why should we bother?" Because they're building a coal power station every week in China or whatever it is. So whatever we do is a drop in the ocean. I still think we have to.
You can't think like that.
We can't think like that. So no, it is an amazing moment. Anyway, talking of amazing moments, should we do the quiz?
Always a highlight of my week, Richard.
That's a fairly dramatically poor week then.
I clearly must be having clearly must be having some very dull weeks.
Anyway, I couldn't possibly comment on that. So last week's question on the quiz, it was quite a straightforward one, really. I asked, who said the following: if you're in the hanging mood, hang people like pictures in the best light. Right? And the answer was, of course, the former chairman of British Rail, Sir Peter Parker. He had a couple of absolutely brilliant quotes. I've got his book here. I don't know if you can see that, the autofocus.
I shall have to get a copy and read it.
It's a really good book. If you're listening on audio and haven't any idea what I've just done, it's his autobiography called For Starters. This is one of my favourite quotes in it. He says, they're like sort of little sayings and phrases. He said, "Do not ask Frank Sinatra his view on the atomic bomb. Ask him to croon." And I must admit, every time I open social media to see the latest person offering the world their view on how to sort the railways out, I do think of that.
For me, his best quote was that wonderful one about the crumbling edge of quality.
The crumbling edge of quality is a great line, isn't it? But he had many. He was a very quotable bloke.
Spot on.
It was. We put all the correct answers in the electronic hat, and the winner is Martin Brailsford from Chesterfield, who sent us an email with the correct answer. So, Martin, please do email us again and tell us where you would like us to send your mug. It's info@greensignals.org. We're guessing it's Chesterfield, but we probably need to be a bit more specific than that. And we will get it on its way to you. And I apologise, by the way, for those. I think there's 2 people still waiting for mugs. It's been a bonkers couple of weeks, but I will get to the post office.
And we have to do everything. You even put them in the packs and send them off, don't you, Richard?
We do everything. We are, there's no, absolutely. We're entirely self-sufficient.
Chief cooks and bottle washers.
So, this week's quiz. It's a riddle. I've gone for a riddle. I've no idea. I quite like these, but I'm not sure whether I'm any good at making them up. But I've had a go. So here it is. I'll read it out, but only once. And then we'll put it on the description on our YouTube and the description section on the YouTube channel. And we'll also put it on the website in the additional resources for episode 40. So if you don't write this down, I know, 40. 40. Right? Anyway, here's the question. So it is a riddle, right? My first is in copper, but not in gold. My second is in tin, but not in bold. My third is in magnesium, but not in silver. My fourth is in zinc, but not in river. And my fifth is in metal, but not in wood. I am sleek and I am fast. But who am I? So that is this week's question.
Very good, Richard.
If you think you know, I mean, I always think with this, we think, oh, that's going to catch him. And then five minutes later, somebody's on the our little WhatsApp group going, Can you believe it? They've got it already.
I know.
It's just quite extraordinary. But anyway, if you think, either ping us an email at info@greensignals.org or put it on YouTube. If you put it on YouTube, the world sees it, so that's entirely up to you, of course. But there you go, and we'll announce the winner next week.
I do enjoy the quiz, and clearly
good.
Green Signalers do as well. On to this week's good news story. We congratulate all the teams of Rail family members who took part in this year's Railway Children 3 Peaks by Rail Challenge. Well done them. They raised around £200,000, which is a fabulous amount of money for the Railway Children, and they will notice that in their accounts. According to a post that Nick Millington, Network Rail Route Director for Rail and Borders, put on LinkedIn. I think Nick helped arrange it as well. He did. He's
help
capable
arrange
of
it.
vast
Brilliant.
amounts of work, is that man. Good man,
Yep.
Nick. There were teams from, here we go, deep breath, Merseyrail, East Midlands Railway, Greater Anglia.
You haven't got your teeth in yet, have you?
I'm not properly caffeinated, Richard.
Yeah.
Greater Anglia. It will completely fool the poor old lip readers, won't it? Greater Anglia, Volcarail, Porterbrook, DFT, HS2, ORR, Siemens Mobility, RSSB, Hitachi Rail, Cross Country Trains, Network Rail, Transport for Wales, Morgan Sindel, TfL, and Alstom. And there were more as well, so apologies if you were not included in the list, but take a gold star and go to the top of the class. It's an absolutely brilliant achievement, so well done to everyone who took part, and all those companies and others who have supported their teams in raising £200,000. Fabulous amount of money.
It's absolutely superb. Well done, all of them. It's not an easy gig, that, actually. That 3 Peaks thing. Hard work.
No, it's not. And I have seen pictures looking down the length of the carriage with all these bodies sleeping on the floor between peaks. I'm not even going to go into what it must smell like in there, but who knows? Who knows? All those sweaty feet with the boots off.
Yeah,
anyway,
I think we'd got it the first time. You didn't need to elaborate. But anyway, right. Go on.
And sadly, that ended on.
I'm not even sure it's sadly, actually. I'm quite relieved. But anyway, what were you going to say?
Sadly, that's all we've got time for this week. Thanks so much for watching or listening. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up, leave a comment if you're on YouTube, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. And please do join us again next week. So until then, it's goodbye from me and
it's goodbye from me.
We love it that you're with us. Do come back next week. Goodbye.